Namaskaram and good afternoon to the organizers and also to the energetic audience. I can't see you, so if I look blank at nowhere, it's because I just can't see you at all. There's no light on your faces. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Oh, thanks. Otherwise, it feels as though you're talking to the darkness, and that's not what I'm talking to. So, it's always a pleasure to come to Bangalore and also to interact with those who are the talk of the town, talk of the country, and talk of economies which want to be robust. The startup universe, which seems to be anchored in Bengaluru and which also has a magnetic power that it seems to attract the global talent towards Bengaluru from wherever. And today, of course, you've very clearly reached all performance indicators, and the third largest ecosystem for startups in India, and also India being the third largest, is entirely due to your efforts. And the more number of times I interact, the more ideas that flow from you all. And the ideas are not just for improving the ecosystem itself, but also for government to realize that there are so many ever newer areas into which talent can flow, into which innovations can happen, in which when innovations happen, they change the lives of people. And when I say this, I start with Honourable Prime Minister speaking in the context of the climate change, nationally determined commitments which were given once in Paris and which were almost nearly fulfilled by India by its own resources and talents, and also an enhanced and a more ambitious target which was agreed to when Honourable Prime Minister visited Scotland when the COP27 met. Now, commitments given there were for achieving certain goals, and climate is one area which concerns all of us. So I think when I talk to startups, and for those who are facilitating startups, and for those who think in terms of at various different levels funding the startups, I would still appeal, even at the very beginning, that other than fintech, other than software related, services related, other than service as a software as a service, the SaaS, there are very critical areas in which India would struggle to get talent and also technology. But the moment you start asking for technology, you have a price to pay. However worth it is, I would still think I'll start my appeal to startups and also those who are with the startups, enabling them to perform and to mobilize resources for funding. An importance should be given for climate and climate-related solutions, innovations which are so required, so that when you're talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, it is not just for defense or strategic matters. It's not just for self-sufficiency in food. It is also not just self-sufficiency in certain manufacturing areas which are so critical, but it is self-sufficiency to be able to transition to a better climate in India, to a better climate or less challenged climate conditions in India. These are going to cost a lot for the Indian economy. That cost is not going to be affordable at all if you look at the way in which technologies are being ramped up all over the world. But that cost is got to be footed. That cost has to be borne because the damages and across the board damages that adverse climate and weather conditions can create is going to be big for any country to subsume, absorb, or take on board. So even now you see farmers trying to change their cropping patterns. The sowing of seeds are being pushed further. And a regular monsoon which has to shower good rains, steady rains throughout those monsoon months are now unpredictable in that there is a huge pour down which is almost like the entire monsoon season's rain happening within a couple of days, which no city or no rural area can handle. Or it can be just a delay in the arrival of the monsoon itself. All these are making farmers rethink about how they are going to be plowing, sowing, readying their land, and also looking at when the crop is going to be coming for harvest. That's having a bearing directly on the supply chains. And therefore, the food security is not just an issue of availability of food, but also that cycle in which production happens, post-harvest in which value addition happens, and after that when exports happen in agriculture. We saw that even between 2020 and 2022, Indian agriculture somehow, because of the grit of our farmers, performed, and we were able to export substantially. And the world was looking at us for exports, more exports, in the light of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, because of which supply chains were disrupted badly. And the world was facing a food insecurity. Countries like India, where there is a rich farming tradition, and every 100 kilometers, I'm told, there is a agro-eco environment which is prevalent. So it's not as if all over the country it's the same thing. Every 100 kilometers, there are smaller changes which the farmers are quite familiar with. And as a result, a country which has that kind of a long lineage of good, rich agricultural activity is going to suffer if we don't attend to the climate-related challenges. And in that, I think the startups will have to look at innovative ways in which these vagaries of monsoon can be handled. I'm not sure we are yet there to see how monsoon can itself be regularized. That's a bit far away. But what can be achieved is to see how these vagaries can be handled, how urban planning, rural planning can respect such disasters which may come and plan for themselves in such a way they are not going to be inundated, or they are going to suffer for want of drinking water or drought-like conditions. So the first thing I would appeal to the startup ecosystem is, although you're talking about startup inclusion ecosystem, inclusion is happening, it will continue to happen, and I'm sure the more exchanges that we have with all of you all, it will be even furthered and smoothened. But the areas in which startups will have to venture in, because that's the need of the hour for the country, I've just highlighted this one, the challenges that emerge out of unpredictable climatic condition, and that has a bearing on agriculture, it has a bearing on urban living, it has a bearing on how we manage our water and rivers, It has a bearing on disaster management. It has a bearing on the kind of houses that we construct. It has a bearing on the national security as well. It has a bearing on very many such industries which are up and newly coming up. Energy, for instance. And therefore, I would want the startup, young minds, energetic minds, restless minds to touch on areas which are still not predominantly seen in the presence of startups. I know you've gone into looking at the low orbit satellites. You're also very well tapping governments' opening up of areas such as atomic energy, logistics, and so on. So my appeal is more and more innovations coming from the startups for dealing with climate and climate change is going to be absolutely precious, and India would only be better for it the more such activities happen from the startups. Of course, since 2016, when Honourable Prime Minister has given the call for working with the startups, he's even now announced that January 16th of every year is going to be celebrated as Startup Day, honoring the wonderful work startups are doing to India. Actually, if startups' contribution has to be looked at, I would compare it with what the economy saw by the opening up in 1991. A very license quota, Raj-ridden pre-91 economy, which was suffocated, entrepreneurship couldn't grow, resources were not very optimally utilized, where government should not be, more government was present. So that pre-91 era for the economy and the post-91 era, even better post-2014 era, where you're seeing a lot more opportunities for entrepreneurship to flourish, to grow, and also to scale up. Similarly is the way in which I'd like to look at the contribution that startups are making. Old traditional industries which belong to the core area of manufacturing, which existed even during the license quota regime, which existed even before that during the British rule, somehow managed to continuously perform against severe odds, and they continue, and even today they are contributing to the Indian economy. But now the environment is also lots more opened up for them, and therefore their contribution continues, albeit in a favorable, much more favorable environment. So if that is core, old, and the manufacturing backbone of India, I think because of the startups and the way in which startups have come very rapidly, spreading into areas which can have quick recognition of the value that you were creating, you have actually brought in the horizon which opens up for the newer activities. In situ solutions for festering problems of urbanization or infrastructure. In situ solutions for land and land-based problems. And also, traditionally the kind of strength that India has had, but you could not break that mold and come out to meet the challenges of the growing globalized world, is today being facilitated because of the innovation, because of the rapid solution-giving ways in which startups have functioned. So you're actually bringing a certain character to the Indian economy, which was desperately needed for a very long time, many decades. And because of that character which has now come into the Indian economy, I see hope for half of our population which is under 25 years. Nearly 700 million of us were born between 1980s to 2000, and they are the ones who are now joining forces with you. You are going to be the productive factor for Amrit Kal for the next 25 years. And if Honourable Prime Minister has very clearly put before us during his address from the Red Fort, saying, just shed all those colonial hang-ups that we suffer from. Forget what has been burdening us down and look at the energies with which you can think of an India which can be challenging the world on many aspects. An India which can really come up with solutions. There was one young man in my team who said, ma'am, we don't any longer have an India which wants technology. We are not a technology adapter. We are not seeking technology to adapt so that we become more productive. We are not seeking technology for making ourselves a lot more modern in our ways of doing things. We are not seeking technology because we don't have it. We are now becoming technology providers because of the ways in which you're giving solutions. So technology provider, so technology becomes a prominent feature. And this technology provision, meaning providing of such technology, cannot happen unless you're skilled enough. Unless you are skilled enough and you keep upgrading your skills effortlessly, that's not going to be possible at all. So you're looking at an India which is now placing primacy for technology, and you're looking at an India which is now placing primacy for skilling. And we are not just looking at skilling just those people who will know to use tools to take care of a simple machine repair, or a car which is faulted in the road, or a tire which is dysfunctional. They are required as well. Yes, that is fine. But you're looking at skilling for those sectors which are new and upcoming. New and upcoming, I would say, the renewable energy sector. The transition from fossil fuel to newer energies which are going to be earth-friendly. And for that, it is not just getting that finer technology which is going to do the conversion, but also those who are going to be skilled enough to maintain that, service that, recharge them. So you're creating a layer which is now requiring newer skills, which is also now required rapidly. Because the advancement that India is making into renewable energy demands that we have enough number of people who can also service it, who can also continuously maintain them in their prime form. So you're looking at skilling and technology as the two prominent feature of this new India in its Amrit Kal, which is leading towards India, which will be a developed India by 2047, and you will be the change makers for it, because that's the age. And I therefore see the government's role also as a technology conscious government. So the government can for 1 minute call itself techpreneur, not so much an entrepreneur, because we strongly believe we should not be in business where we are not required to be. There are some core sectors which have been identified, which have been announced in the last budget through a policy, the budget before 21 budget, through a policy announcement that government will be present in minimum form and fashion in those sectors which are core sectors and not beyond. And in those core sectors as well, private sector can come in. So it is consistent for the government for being a techpreneur, but to a limited extent, so that it can facilitate by creating what I think a common public good. And what are they? You already know, many of you already are onboarded onto it. The technology framework, the India stack, are all now created as a common public good by India. And Indian entrepreneurs are welcome to use it. And that is why simultaneously when you came up with account aggregator, with which anyone can have very quick access to credit based on information sharing by agencies which are authorized by the account holder themselves. Similar is the ONDC, which has come for digital commerce. It's an open network. Similar is the OSEN, the Credit Enhancement Network, which is open again. All these are going to bring in greater inclusion, financial inclusion for startups. The small businesses who may not be in the innovation mode, but who are actually generating a lot of things in the manufacturing or in the service sectors. Banks are becoming a lot more tuned into startups and their requirements. And that is why when government announced the policy and when it is bringing all these public infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, banks are first getting themselves onboarded onto it so that they benefit from that wide access of information through which they are able to access those clients who it would want for their service or for providing them with banking facilities. So many things which Government of India is moving on with, which aims for financial inclusion and also for providing that very important digital basis for our Indian economy. That is the basis with which we are able to now reach out to every individual citizen for any service that he might want. The digital base gives that opportunity for us, whether you're transferring money to him or whether you want banking service extended to him or whether he's a farmer who's looking for better marketing of his products, or whether you're looking at an MSME which produces some of the rarest components for even aerospace industries. These platforms have come of great help. And in that too, the role of the startups for creating smaller solutions using these common platforms are now remarkably noticed, appreciated, and sought after by very many countries outside. So it is not just CoWIN platform which helped us to see who's vaccinated and who's not. And for that person to have forgotten which first dose did he take and to go and stand before the person who's going to give him the injection and say, I forgot which one I had. Was it AstraZeneca or was it, Bharat Biotech? There's no need. Everything is in that phone which you have today. And that is one of the things which I need to highlight. What was the coverage in 2014? There was a lot of data given to me and promptly my people have kept it before me. I'm not sure if it is important for you, but I think in the business of understanding where India is and where India moved from in 2014 to today, if I can get the data, I'd like to tell you. Sorry about this. I hope you'll put up with me for a moment. I would have been better off with my iPad. Yes. In 2009, only 17% of adults in India had bank accounts. Only 15% used digital payments. 1 in 25 had unique ID documents. And about 37% had mobile phones. But in the recent times, what are the unprecedented changes that have happened? Tele-density has gone up to 93%. Over 1 billion people had a digital ID document. 80+% had bank accounts. 80% had bank accounts. 80+% 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 had ban And as of 2022, over 6 billion digital payment transactions are completed every month, per month. So technology is a medium to empower people of the country, and that is where Government of India is putting in a lot of resources and also skills. I know we are spending a lot in terms of providing medical facilities to people. The e-Sanjeevani initiative of Government of India, the Health and Family Welfare, is digitally connecting doctors to patients. And interestingly, this morning when I was coming from Delhi to Bengaluru, a passenger seated next to me said, I'm from the US, but I've come here. Oh, a US startup was my first question. He said, no, but I'm in the business of getting patients to India for treatment, and the numbers are growing unbelievably. So I just want to quote this number, which I was happy to hear. Digitally connecting doctors to patients, which is helping the patient to reach the last mile. Over 7 crore teleconsultations have taken so far since 2019. So when I'm addressing startups for inclusion, I'm actually asking for you to have many more things included in your scheme of things. Because that's how the benefit of innovative brains can actually help the country. From our side, the government is always open for inputs, for your thoughts. I think in the last 8 years, without sort of discouraging entrepreneurs, we are only trying to catalyze what they can contribute to the country. Startups, one term which used to harangue me in 2019 when I took over the finance ministry, was angel tax. And if it was indeed angel tax, I used to wonder why startups are after me. It is angel enough, but it wasn't. And therefore we had to do a lot of correction. Angel tax was brought in 2012, but it was in 2019 that its applicability on startups were completely removed. And also, in order to bring in greater inclusion for startups, Government of India holds Startup Innovation Week and also has Digital India Week, Smart India Hackathon. There are so many such programs to expose startups to the areas in which a lot of challenges are being faced by us, and many solutions are coming through as given by you all. Many premier institutions, IITs, IIMs, NITs, are all now becoming agents for nurturing talent and also for promoting many of the startup young minds. The GIFT City is one thing which I would like to mention about and leave it for you all to think as to how best a global financial hub with all the features of any internationally recognized hub, be it in Singapore, be it in New York, or once upon a time Hong Kong, are all now available for Indian startups to benefit from, whether you're raising resources or whether you're meeting up with international clients, whether fintech companies from Singapore which are moving from Singapore to India, you meet them all there. There is a rapid growth. And also, in the last budget, we have made a provision for universities from abroad which can come and set up STEM, science, technology, engineering and medicine, and also finance in the IFSC center, and no UGC will be monitoring them if they set it up there. They'll be completely autonomous. So even Indian universities can look at setting up a place in partnership with some universities which can join in for certification. in the IFSC, and I'm sure the startups can look at the IFSC for many reasons. India for a long time did not have maintenance and repair operations of aircrafts. We have immense number of aircrafts, both for civil and military use, but we didn't have an MRO center at all. We have opened this opportunity up in the IFSC, given a lot of concessions so that MRO activities for India can come in. It is very critical, I say this to you, because globally, I am talking about just before the pandemic and now gradually similar is the situation. Globally, if air traffic is improving at a certain number, India alone is growing at 16%, and the rapid rate at which air travel is increasing, MRO is going to be one of those big areas, both for skilled manpower and for large companies which want that facility, not just for those who operate within India, but those who fly over India and fly over again over India again to reach west or the east. So MRO is one area in which many of the startups can look at what kind of challenges exist so that you can do something. And lastly, next year, I'd started off by talking about food insecurity. I'd started off in terms of the global outreach. Next year, for two important reasons, India and its startups will have to work together with very many of your friends and compatriots from all over the world. India will be chairing the G20. The presidency is India's for the next 12 months, beginning 1st December. That's going to be an opportunity for ministers from the G20 country and also from the multilateral institutions to come to India. India will be showcased in all its states. Many of the meetings will happen in very many different states. In fact, mostly all states are going to be covered in one or the other meeting. And I'm happy to say, as a member of parliament from Karnataka, dealing with finance, the finance minister and the central bank governors meeting, the summit of the finance ministers and the central bank governors will be held in February in Bengaluru. There are therefore immense opportunity because there are two tracks in G20. One is the finance track and the other is the Sherpa track. The Sherpa track has a lot of other activities with the youth, women, civil society organizations and so on. Every such opportunity should be maximum utilized by our startups because you can showcase what you want. And within India, but 20 G20 finance ministers and central bank governors are going to be here to watch what you want to offer them. So I would appeal to the startups, particularly those in and around Karnataka, in Bengaluru, that you take this opportunity and see where you can lead India from, because that's going to be a year full of activities. And the other one, which is very related to the food security and the well-being, is the year of millets. India had its own year of millets. But due to India's persuasion, Prime Minister's specific efforts, the UN has declared next year, 2023, as the International Year of the Millets. And Karnataka is one of the lead producers of various kinds of millets. And in that, there is just a lot of interest. I can see the world looking at not just a quinoa which comes from Latin America, but with so many such ancient coarse grains in India, there's so much that you can do towards improving the farmer's condition, improving the urban sedate citizens' condition, and give a solution through millets for healthy eating, and also look at markets which can fetch better price for our farmers. It also can generate a lot of employment, because of the value additions that can be brought in. So I've just sort of touched on so many different things which I wanted to bring to your notice. But of course, defense production, renewable energy, nuclear, satellites, space technologies, they're all there. You already touched upon those areas. I'm asking you to touch upon some of those less glamorous areas as well. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.